Hello, Maria. First of all, I would like to thank you on behalf of the International Publishers Association for agreeing to participate in Fireside Chat for IPA's annual General Assembly. And here is my first question to you. For those who don't know your story in the Philippines, you have lived under a right-wing populist. Please tell us, what was it like?
Oh my gosh. Well, let me say the reason it ended is because our constitution mandates 1 6-year term and our military held the line. They stuck to the lines of the constitution. Look, watching everything crumble, watching the world turn upside down, having personal repercussions. In the 6 years, President Rodrigo Duterte used both online, right, the internet. So that was weaponization of the internet, and then the weaponization of the law came down. The checks and balances collapsed within 6 months. He became the most powerful leader the Philippines has ever known. And the Philippines, like it has a constitution patterned after the United States. So in those 6 months, the legislature caved into the executive. And then it became, to try to hold the line, which didn't hold that long, it became the judiciary, individual members of the judiciary that had to have the courage to stand up. I'm seeing this happen again all over the world. In some cases in the United States, faster than here. The consequences are personal for me and Rappler, which is what the office you see behind you. We had in 2016 weaponization of the law, weaponization of social media, 2017, top down the weaponization of the law, right? By 2017, the government began trending hashtag arrest Maria Ressa. And in 2019, in a little over a year, I had 11 arrest warrants. And it's taken until now, we've won the cases after Duterte left office, but I still have one case all the way to the Supreme Court. So the advice to others in the same boat, fight for your rights right at the beginning, because what you lose is going to take so much longer to claw back those rights.
The IPA has a pre-war term that celebrates brave book publishers who stand up to intimidation, harassment, and worse. Given everything you just told us, where do you find your courage, and do you have any insights on how to inspire others to be brave?
Well, first, book publishers, right? There's a reason why book banning was done in the 40s. There's a reason why fascist movements first kill that kind of the free thinking that books can give you, how schools, the academe are attacked, right? What we've seen is not just media capture, that's followed by academic capture, by NGO capture, by judiciary capture before you have state capture. So that's the first step, is that know you have a role. And what we've learned in the Philippines is every person in that process has to have the courage to stand up, right? You have to have the courage to take a risk, because when you don't take a risk at the right time, at the time when you're called to take a risk, then you give up your future. Uh, how do you have courage? In the moment, you don't call it courage. What you do is you define your values. Gvantsa, you know this. It's every chapter in How to Stand Up to a Dictator. The title of the chapter is the macro, what is happening on a big scale, and then the subtitle is the personal impact of that. So very simple. Know you are going to be afraid. Accept you're going to be afraid. And one of the things I did was to say, embrace your fear. There are four of us who co-founded Rappler, and we have a rule. You pass the fear. Only one of the four of us could be afraid at a time, and we talk about it, right? Because as fear spreads, courage spreads. So the first, embrace your fear. When you embrace your fear, you can then touch it, hold it, and then workflow it, so that you've already worked out what'll happen in a worst case scenario. And that then doesn't stop you from living up to your values. I think this is a pivotal moment for the world. And it isn't just one country right now. Georgia has shown us exactly what people are willing to do, right? More than 350 days of straight protests. But of course, at the front lines is Ukraine. I was just last night with Alexandra Matviichik and Natalia Gumenyuk. They're here in the Philippines. Part of it is, I guess every person in a democracy also has to ask themselves the question in the book, what are you willing to sacrifice for the truth? Because this is that moment. Are you willing to do what Ukrainians have done, which is to actually go and pick up arms to defend their country? When government services fail, they take over, they help each other. We've seen this to varying degrees in the Philippines, but this is it. I call it the information Armageddon, that is the battle we need to fight. It's a battle for facts over lies. It's a battle for, the more formal term the UN would use is information integrity. Because if you can't tell fact from fiction, then you cannot have civil society hold power to account. If we give up our democracies now, and we are willingly giving them up if we don't act, then we lose it all. And a fascist government, when it combines infotech with biotech, right? When you get those two combined, this will be at least a decade, if not more. It isn't going to be like the old days, as in the 1940s, when it was easier because you don't have this technology. So I guess that's it. This is it. This is the moment, right? What are you willing to do? What are you willing to publish? How much of your comfort and safety are you willing to give up?
Thank you, Maria. This was really inspiring, and thanks for giving all your support to Georgia. You just mentioned Ukraine, of course, and all the nations who need so much the voice from the Nobel Peace Prize winner, of course, like Maria Ressa. And in your book, you also just mentioned how to stand up to a dictator. And whenever you talk, you always know that the ultimate outcome of the current misinformation regime is the erosion of trust. And please tell us more about this dynamic.
It's funny, I feel like I've been saying this since 2016. I feel like Sisyphus and Cassandra combined because it hasn't gotten better and it must get better, because it isn't just big tech that abdicated responsibility for protecting the public. It's also democratic states that didn't build a public interest tech stack, right? Everything in the physical world is being transformed into the virtual world. And yet that virtual world is controlled by private tech companies that are commodifying human beings for profit, right? We shouldn't be commodified. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights should actually still be in place in there. So look, I've said this over and over since 2016. Since lies spread faster than facts, 6 times faster, that's 2018 MIT study, it's significantly worse today. Without facts, you can't have truth. Without truth, you can't have trust. Without these three, we don't have a shared reality. We can't begin to solve any existential problems like climate change. COP30 is happening now, or has happened. We can't do anything. You can't have journalism. You can't have democracy. That's what's at stake today. And I think even journalists, right, we have been commodified because the distribution system rewards outrage. Our biology has been hacked for profit. So if we understand these dimensions, then you realize that you need to move from the virtual world. We need to demand greater restrictions, greater legislation. I mean, the EU leads this, but even the EU is buckling to what people have called the broligarchy, the tech bros who are acting like oligarchs. So this is what we're seeing globally. Hold communities of action, move from the virtual world, organize yourselves, demand facts so that you can understand what in our world today, in each of our countries, what do we deserve as citizens, and how can we hold government to account in this pivotal moment where climate change is shifting, right? In this pivotal moment for the world.
We should try to end on an upbeat and with some practical advice. You
Sure.
described how the populists and platforms are relentlessly undermining truth and trust and ultimately democracy. Tell us what book publishers can do to fight this, and do you have any examples of successful campaigns that we can emulate?
So many. And here's the thing. I look at the Philippines, and Gvantsa, you know this, right? From the time the book was published to today, the Philippines has moved from hell to purgatory, right? And I feel like the West is just going to hell. So some of the lessons are in how to stand up to a dictator, how we survive this time period. But I think the critical part here is that you define your values, define the world that you want, draw the line and hold the line, right? And know that there are no guarantees. Our parents and grandparents who lived through World War II had no guarantees. They put one foot in front of the other. And I think that's what we need to do. There has to be radical collaboration, not just of publishers, of news organizations, of governments. This is a time of literal creative destruction. And we need to know that the world we lived in has been destroyed, the old world order, and that this is a time for us to create. Right? If we go into it with that mindset, then perhaps we can create a better world than the past. But really important in all of this is technology, a public interest tech stack, right? We need to mirror that so that we aren't insidiously manipulated and that tech platform exploited by geopolitical power. This is the moment, and only active citizens who need publishers who will give them the knowledge and context of the world we live in, right? We've survived. Oh, here's the last part I'll tell you to give you hope. The man who tried to close down Rappler and to jail me for the rest of my life, well, Rodrigo Duterte was arrested in March this year for alleged crimes against humanity, and he is now at The Hague awaiting trial. Impunity ends.
Yeah, that's really very important example, I think, for the whole world, because this is how the dictators end. And I have very, very quick last question.
Sure.
If you had your time again, what would you do differently and why?
It's funny. I think I like living a life of no regrets. I was a breaking news reporter. I'm a breaking news reporter. And I think part of the reason Rappler survived in this is that we understand what it's like when you're in the middle of conflict, when you're in the middle of a war zone. Who would have ever thought that the war zone would be not just our own country, but in the virtual world, right? So I think that was what guided us through the most difficult, most fearful moments. I mean, there were times I would go to sleep and I had no idea whether someone would bust into the door and try to arrest me again, right? Or I had cameras so that no one can plant drugs in my home. All sorts of, you do all of those things. But I think the first is, please live a life of no regrets. Live a life of no regrets, right? Live according to your values. Believe in the good. I think that's also the other thing that kept us going. We believed that people are basically good and that fear ends. And that's part of what it is, a faith in the good. And then you move, you act. Know that hope doesn't just appear from above. Hope comes from action. And that's what we need in our world today, action to create perhaps even a better world than the one we came from.
Maria, thank you for an exceptionally inspiring fireside chat. I'm sure your conviction, resilience, and commitment to press freedom, but to freedom to publish it more broadly, of course, resonated with everyone in the room. We are truly grateful for your presence and your voice, and thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And please publish the books that we need for this moment in time.